Hello, my name is Abigail Corus, and I'm going to be talking about solutions to juveniles with mental illness for this presentation. So, first, I want to talk about the mental health statistics. This kind of happened around 1980 and 1990. There was a rise in violent crime in the juvenile justice system, and they started focusing more towards punishment. And so a lot of the resources that were once allocated to mental health issues became really inadequate if they were even offered. And so studies show that now 50 to 66%, which is about half to 1/3 of juveniles in the criminal justice system, suffer from mental health disorder. And a lot of these common mental health disorders are like depression and anxiety, and they come with the symptoms of increased aggression, increased anger, lack of impulse control. And the difference with the aggression and anger is like they become more angry, and then they become more like aggressive behavior towards others. And for the criminal justice system, this can mean that a lot of these kids are getting into more issues in juvenile halls, and especially just out in the world. Like the issues are impacting their behavior significantly, and many times they don't understand why they're behaving the way they do, which is why they get into even more trouble. And a lot of the solutions that are used for these aggressive juveniles is solitary confinement, but this can lead to even higher rates of anxiety, depression. For juveniles that are already experiencing them, it becomes more debilitating to them. And a lot of studies have shown that the solitary confinement can be just as psychological damaging as torture. So for someone who already has the mental health issues, it becomes even worse on their mental health to be put in solitary confinement psychologically. So some of the solutions that I have looked into are, first, as a preventative measure, is mental health in schools, court diversion, and then a final step, juvenile justice counselors. So mental health in schools is a preventative step, because a lot of these kids do start out with having a lot of fights, getting into trouble at school, and they just continue to get in trouble, continue to get punishment, but they don't understand why they're in trouble. They don't understand why they're doing what they're doing, which is why I believe that there should be a mental health professional in the school system that when they're having these kids that are constantly getting into trouble, they can assess them to see if they have a mental health disorder and what kind of mental health disorder they have, and kind of dive deeper into, where did it come from. A lot of these kids, it stems from the abuse that they have at home. It can be physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect. It can also due to substance abuse. If their parents are substance abusers, they could start abusing substances as well, which can contribute to the mental health that they are in. So I believe if we have somebody in the school system that can assess these kids and get that help early on needed, then it can help prevent them from being into the life of crime and going down that path. Of course, this isn't the best solution for everyone, because there's just some schools who can't they don't afford the funding to have mental health professionals, which is where the second step comes into play. Second step would be court diversion. Court diversion is where instead of a juvenile who's been arrested for mostly they're crimes that aren't committed against another person, so generally most of the time it's not for murder, but theft, drug use, threatening and stuff like that. Instead of going into a court hearing and having fines and getting served, and then you have a criminal conviction and you're labeled as a delinquent, you would go through a different process where you meet with the staff, and normally you get a referral first. The referral can come from police officers, prosecutioners, judges, and after you have a referral, you have to admit guilt. So for you to be in the process, you have to admit that you did do something wrong. Even if you don't understand why it is, you have to admit that you did do something wrong. And so then you meet with staff and volunteers, and they will go through your case and just look at everything and kind of dive deep into how did you get to where you are, why did you make those decisions, kind of help you break down so that you have accountability. And then you'll be given some kind of task that you have to complete, every week, every month, every year, however long you're in the program for. And normally it is community service. So one example was this guy got busted for having drugs in his backpack at a senior citizen home during a staff meeting. And so he went through the court diversion process, and he actually did community service at the same senior citizen home. And so the court, they give you your contract as long as you are continuing to hold yourself accountable and staying in the contract, then you will have your court file sealed and you won't be labeled as like a delinquent, and it won't affect your life. Because a lot of these juveniles, this one mistake that they have can affect the entire course of their life, because they'll most likely face some type of jail time, which affects their schooling, and then it affects whenever they get out, like getting jobs after, or if they go in whenever they're 16, 17 and stay there for a few years, and it can affect their life afterwards, trying to get into college and getting a job to support themselves after the fact. The last step is a professional career that you can have is juvenile justice counselor. So juvenile justice counselors work in a variety of environments, and they're there to help juveniles re-enter the community and decrease their recidivism rate. So they work with juveniles who have already been in the system, they've already been convicted, they've been arrested, they've already went through everything, but they teach them how to become better citizens and what ways they can help their behavior. So they're there to show these kids how they can become better and better their behavior to re-enter the community and be as successful as possible. The requirements to be a juvenile justice counselor is you have to have a bachelor's degree in human services, which criminal justice is considered a human services field, and you have to have a master's degree normally in accounting. A lot of states require, not accounting, that was my other career. You have to have a master's degree in counseling, psychology, social services, human services, criminal justice, or family counseling. Most states require this, but not all. Everywhere you do have to have a year of experience. And then the states that require the bachelor's degree, you also have to have extensive hours of supervised clinical experience. It's a very extensive education, so there are many places who may not have it just because of the funding, as the average pay in Illinois for a juvenile detention center counselor is $63,910 a year, and the average salary in Illinois is $5,409 a year for just any other job. So it does pay substantially higher than a lot of jobs on average, but it is something that is needed to try and just keep these juveniles from re-offending, because the more juveniles that come out of the system and then re-offend, the more the cost of that center becomes, because they have to pay, because they have more people in their center. So some of the strengths for the career that I feel I match and like with the criteria of this career is you have to be able to communicate, because you're communicating with the juveniles, the adults, and everyone in the center. You have to be able to listen, because you're going to be having some deep conversations with the juveniles on like how they got to where they're at today, how they want to change their behaviors, where they believe they need to change, and just having that deep conversation with them, which also means you have to be able to empathize with them in a calm nature, because it is very sensitive topics that you're going to be talking about with them. So you need to have empathy towards their situation. Even if you've never been in a situation like that, you need to have more empathy. Working in stressful environments, I think every work environment can be stressful, but even so, this can be a hostile and aggressive environment for some of these individuals who have never had the help they've needed before. So I believe I can work in more stressful environments. It would definitely be an adjustment doing a hostile and aggressive environment. I will say I've worked in customer service for like coffee shops, and some people get kind of aggressive, or hostile, more aggressive. So it's just learning how to calmly talk to these people. You have to be organized. I am a very organized person, so I have that. And you have to be able to work with team members, which can be really hard. I think that's one of the hardest things that I've had in school is working in groups. So I do think that is something that while I can do, I could learn to do it better. And this is my resources, and that is all. Thank you.